Throughout the annals of Bigfoot lore, native stories and histories of these creatures are often overlooked and forgotten. Researchers stomp into the woods, pounding on trees, screaming, whooping, and hoping for something to respond. Yet natives have had encounters for centuries and have passed on those tales over the generations. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Bikini-Tsa, each tribe may have their own unique name for this creature. Yet their stories all describe the same thing, an immense and powerful being, more than simply another animal. It often serves as a guardian of wild places and warnings to children not to venture too far off. And so, I want to take you through some of these stories and share with you the history of Sasquatch that you don't get to see on TV. We'll also hear some modern accounts from each tribe about encounters that are still happening, with stories that haven't been told outside of tribal communities. On a moonless night, deep in the heart of the Pacific Northwest, a group of Yakima hunters set out into the forest, their breath visible in the crisp autumn air. They moved silently, their senses attuned to the whispers of the woods. They were seeking game to sustain their tribe through the coming winter. As they tracked a deer through the underbrush, the hunters sensed they were not alone. Emerging from the shadows, a group of warriors from a rival tribe that were known for their ferocity ambushed them. The Yakima hunters, outnumbered and caught off guard, had no choice but to flee deeper into the forest. The rival warriors pursued them relentlessly, their war cries echoing through the trees. The Yakima hunters knew the forest well, but their enemies were closing in. Desperation drove them further into the depths of the woods, towards a place few dared to venture, the domain of the Sasquatch. For generations, the Yakima had left gifts and offerings at the edge of this territory, honoring the Sasquatch and seeking its favor. They believed the creature was a guardian of the forest, a being of immense power and wisdom. As they neared the sacred grove where they had often left their tributes, the hunters slowed, their hearts pounding with both fear and hope. And suddenly, the forest grew eerily silent. The rival warriors, sensing something amiss, hesitated at the edge of the grove. The Yakima hunters, knowing they had no other choice, stepped forward and called out to Sasquatch, their voices trembling with respect and reverence. From the shadows, a massive figure emerged, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The Sasquatch stood before them, towering and imposing, yet the Yakima hunters felt no fear. They bowed their heads, offering words of gratitude and respect. The rival warriors were emboldened by their numbers and charged into their grove, weapons raised. But the Sasquatch let out a deafening roar that shook the very trees. With a speed and strength that defied belief, the creature attacked the intruders, its powerful limbs sweeping through them like a storm. The Yakima hunters watched in awe as the Sasquatch defended them. Its fury was unmatched by anything they had witnessed before. The rival warriors, realizing they had provoked a force beyond their understanding, fled in terror, and their cries slowly faded into the night. When the forest was quiet once more, the Sasquatch turned back towards the Yakima hunters. For a moment, it seemed to study them, its gaze piercing and wise. And then with a nod, it slid and disappeared back into the shadows of the forest, leaving the hunters to their thoughts. The Yakima hunters returned to their village. Their hearts were filled with gratitude and a renewed sense of reverence for the Sasquatch. They shared their tale with the elders and the rest of the tribe, and from that night on, the tribe's bond with the guardian of the forest grew even stronger. The legend of the Sasquatch's protection spread far and wide among the Yakima people, a reminder of the power of respect and the ancient ties between humans and the mysteries of the wilds. In modern times, the Yakima continue to honor the legacy of the Sasquatch. The stories are still told around campfires, and the teachings are still passed down from elders to children. The Sasquatch remains a symbol of the tribe's connection to the land and their commitment to preserving their heritage. Researchers and enthusiasts from around the world have come to the Yakima territory, hoping to catch a glimpse of the elusive creature, or to learn about the tribe's unique relationship with it. The Yakima welcome these visitors with open arms, sharing their stories and their way of life, but always with a reminder of the importance of respecting and giving reverence to the natural world. In recent years, the Yakima Nation has hosted annual Bigfoot conventions where researchers and enthusiasts gather to share their experiences and stories. One notable encounter was shared by Mel Skahan, a Yakima tribal member and Bigfoot researcher. He recounted an experience from one of his expeditions into the dense forest of the Pacific Northwest. During a routine outing, Mel and his team were deep in the woods conducting research and setting up trail cameras. As night fell, they heard unusual sounds, heavy footsteps, and several low, guttural growls. The team decided to stay put and observe, and then, to their amazement, they saw a large, shadowy figure moving between the trees. The creature was tall, covered in dark hair, and moved with a grace that belied its size. Mel described the encounter as both awe-inspiring and humbling. He emphasized the importance of respecting these creatures, referring to them as hairy brothers of the Yakima people. This experience reinforced his belief that Sasquatch is not just a myth, but a living, breathing part of our natural world. The Ojibwe, also known as the Chippewa, call themselves Anishinaabe and are one of the largest indigenous tribes in North America, with a rich cultural heritage that includes a deep connection to the natural world and a wealth of oral traditions. Among these traditions are the legends of Sabe, the Ojibwe name for Sasquatch, or Bigfoot. These stories are not merely tales of a mysterious creature lurking in the woods. They are woven into the very fabric of Ojibwe spirituality, morality, and their understanding of their own cosmology. In Ojibwe cosmology, Sabe is considered a guardian of the forest and a being that maintains the balance between humans and nature, with both physical and spiritual attributes. It also represents one of the 7 grandfather teachings, and that is honesty, reminding the Ojibwe people to be truthful in their dealings with others, and also to always be truthful to themselves. Long ago, when Nokomis was but a young girl, the forests of the Great Lakes were her playground. She was known for her curiosity and her deep connection to the natural world. Her grandmother often told her stories of the spirits that dwelled in the woods, the most powerful of which was Sabe, the Great Guardian. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nokomis ventured deeper into the forest than she had ever done before. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the sounds of the forest enveloped her. She felt a strange pull, as if something was guiding her very steps. As she walked, she came upon a clearing bathed in the soft glow of twilight. In the center stood a massive figure, partially hidden by the shadows of the trees. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized she was in the presence of Sabe. The creature's eyes, glowing with an ethereal light, met hers, and she felt a wave of calm wash over her. Nokomis remembered her grandmother's teachings and slowly approached, her small hands trembling. She knelt at the edge of the clearing and placed a bundle of offerings on the ground, berries, herbs, and a small covered figure of a bear, a symbol of strength and protection. "Great Sabe," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I offer these gifts to you. Please watch over my people and protect us from harm. Sabé remained still, his gaze never leaving her. After a moment he stepped forward and gently took the offerings. Nokomis felt a surge of warmth and knew that her plea had been heard. The guardian of the forest nodded, a silent promise, before retreating into the shadows. From that day on, Nokomis felt a special bond with Sabé. She often returned to the clearing, leaving offerings and speaking to the guardian in hushed tones. As she grew older, she became the village's wise woman, and her connection to Sabé remained a closely guarded secret. Many years later, Nokomis village of Migizi had become known for its tranquility and harmony with nature. The villagers lived in peace, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the land, and the spirits watched over them. Among these spirits was Sabé, the great Sasquatch, a guardian of the forest and known for its immense strength and elusive presence. One fateful night, the peace of Migizi was shattered. A rival tribe, driven by jealousy and hunger for power, launched a surprise attack. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and the cries of battle. Flames licked the night sky as the invaders set fire to the village, their war cries echoing through the trees. Wise woman Nokomis gathered the children and the elderly into the center of the village. Her heart was heavy with fear. She knew that the warriors of the Migizi were brave, but they were outnumbered and unprepared. As she chanted prayers to the spirits, a sense of hopelessness began to creep into their hearts. Suddenly, a deep and resonant roar cut through the chaos. The ground trembled as a massive figure emerged from the shadows of the forest. It was Sabé, the guardian of the Ojibwe. Towering and formidable, his eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and his presence commanded both awe and terror. The invaders, caught off guard by the appearance of the legendary creature, hesitated. Sabé moved with incredible speed for his size, his powerful limbs sweeping through the attackers with ease. His roars were deafening, a primal sound that struck fear into the hearts of the rival tribe. They had heard tales of the Sabé, but no one had ever seen him, and now they faced his wrath. The villagers watched in awe as Sabé defended them. His movements were a blur of strength and fury, each strike precise and devastating. The invaders realized they were no match for the guardian of the forest and began to retreat. Panic spread among them as they fled into the night, their cries of fear slowly fading into the distance. As the last of the invaders disappeared, Sabé stood in the center of the village, his massive chest heaving with exertion. The flames that had threatened to consume Migizi were now dying embers, and the villagers slowly emerged from their hiding places. Elder Nokomis approached Sabé, her eyes filled with gratitude and reverence. "Thank you, great Sabé," she whispered in a trembling voice. "You have saved us." Sabé looked down at her, his eyes softening. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of her words, before turning and disappearing back into the shadows of the forest. The villagers knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment that would be passed down through generations. From that night on, the story of Sabé's bravery became a legend among the Ojibwe people. The villagers of Migizi rebuilt their homes, their spirits renewed by the knowledge that they were protected by a guardian of immense power and yet compassion. And though Sabé remained a mysterious figure, his presence was felt in every rustle of the leaves and every shadow that moved through the forest. One modern account comes from a member of the Ojibwe tribe in northern Wisconsin. In October 2021, a deer hunter near the Powell Marsh Wildlife Area in Vilas County reported seeing a large, two-legged figure moving quickly through the marsh. This area is known for its dense forest and wetlands, and has long been a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings. The hunter, who wished to remain anonymous, described the creature as being covered in dark hair and standing well over 7 feet tall. He said it moved with a surprising speed and agility before disappearing silently into the thick brush. The sighting was shared within the local Ojibwe community and has sparked a renewed interest in the legends of Sasquatch in this area. The Powell Marsh area has long been a place of intrigue among the local people, with many stories of being watched by shadows in the darkest reaches of the swamp. And now, full disclosure, my grandparents lived on 200 acres in this exact area. I spent several months each and every year exploring the wilderness as a child, never knowing where their land ended or where the public or reservation lands began. It was all simply my forest, my home. In fact, until the early 90s, tribal sweat lodge ceremonies were held each year atop the Great Hill on my grandparents' property. And while I was too little to participate, my uncles told me about stories the men would sometimes share inside. And yes, my family, including myself, have stories of encounters with Sabe. Stories I'll get into at another time. Long before the arrival of European settlers, the Chickasaw people spoke of a creature known as Lofa. Lofa was a giant, hairy being who roamed the forests and swamps, watching over the land and all of its inhabitants. He was said to be covered in thick, matted fur, with eyes that glowed like embers at night. Lofa was both feared and revered, for he was a powerful guardian who could bring both blessings and curses. The elders tell stories of how Lofa had been created by the Great Spirit to protect the Chickasaw people and the land they call home. He was a being of immense strength and wisdom, who could communicate with the animals and the spirits of the forest. Lofa was a solitary figure, rarely seen by humans, but his presence was always felt. The Chickasaw believed that as long as Lofa watched over them, they would be safe from harm. One autumn, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew crisp, the Chickasaw village was bustling with activity. The harvest had been bountiful, and the people were preparing for the coming winter. But amidst the joy and celebration, a shadow of fear began to creep into the hearts of the villagers. It started with the disappearance of a young hunter named Chula. He had gone into the forest to check his traps and had not returned. The villagers searched for him, calling his name and scouring the woods, but there was no sign of Chula. Days turned into weeks, and hope slowly began to fade. Then, one night, a young woman named Teeda vanished from her home. She had gone to sleep beside her husband, but when he awoke, she was gone. Panic spread through the village as more people began to disappear, and the elders gathered to discuss what could be done. The council of elders met in the great longhouse, their faces etched with worry. The chief, Tisho Minko, spoke first. "We have lost too many of our people. We must find out what is happening and put an end to this." Pio Minko, a respected warrior, nodded in agreement. "The tracks were found near the village are unlike any I've seen before. They are large and deep, as if made by a giant. Could it be that Lofa has turned against us?" The elders murmured among themselves, their voices filled with fear and uncertainty. Finally, an old woman named Itawamba spoke up. "Lofa is our guardian. He would not harm us without reason. We must seek his guidance and find out what has angered him." Tisho Minko stood and addressed the council. "I will go into the forest and seek out Lofa. I will ask him why he has turned against us, and what we must do to appease him. I will go alone, for no group of hunters has ever seen him, but the old men say that a single man can find him." The council agreed, and Tisho Minko prepared for his journey. He took his long knife, tomahawk, and a flintlock rifle, and he set out into the forest under the light of the full moon. Tisho Minko moved silently through the forest, his senses alert to every sound and movement. The tracks he followed led him deeper into the woods, where the trees grew tall and the underbrush was thick. As the sun set and darkness enveloped the land, Tisho Minko found a large oak tree and sat down with his back against it, his rifle resting in his lap. He listened to the sounds of the night, the rustling of leaves and the calls of nocturnal animals. Before the moon had set, a deer raced past him, spooked by something unseen. Then he heard heavy footsteps. The rustling of leaves were moving in his direction. Tisho Minko held his breath, his heart pounding inside of his chest. A figure emerged from the shadows, towering and covered in fur. It was Lo-Fa, his eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. Tisho Minko stood slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Great Lo-Fa," he called out, "I seek your guidance. Our people are disappearing and we do not know why. Have we angered you?" Lo-Fa's deep rumbling voice filled the night air. "You have not angered me, Tisho Minko, but there is a great danger in the forest, one that threatens both your people and the land. I have been trying to protect you, but I cannot do it alone." Tisho Minko listened intently as Lo-Fa spoke. He explained the threat that had come to the forest. A group of white settlers had arrived, bringing with them strange weapons and diseases. They had been cutting down trees, polluting the rivers, and hunting animals to near extinction. The settlers had no respect for the land or its spirits, and their actions had angered the great spirit of the forest. "The settlers have brought with them a creature of darkness," Lo-Fa continued. "It is a malevolent spirit that feeds on fear and suffering. It is what has been taking your people, using their fear to grow stronger. I've been trying to stop it, but it is too powerful for me alone." Tisho Minko felt a chill run down his spine. "What can we do to stop this creature?" Lo-Fa's eyes glowed brighter. "You must gather with your warriors and drive the settlers from the land. You must cleanse the forest and restore the balance. Only then will the creature be weakened enough for me to defeat it." Tisho Minko nodded, determination in his eyes. "We will do as you say, great Lo-Fa. We will protect our land and our people." Tisho Minko returned to the village and gathered the warriors. He told them of his encounter with Lo-Fa and of the great threat that faced them. The warriors, though fearful, were ready to fight for their home and their families. Under the cover of darkness, the Chickasaw warriors moved silently through the forest, their weapons at the ready. They found the settlers' camp, a crude collection of tents and cabins, and launched their surprise attack. The settlers, caught off guard, were quickly overwhelmed, and as the battle raged, Tisho Minko felt a presence behind him. He turned to see the creature of darkness, a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. The creature lunged at him, but Tisho Minko was ready. He raised his rifle and fired, the shot echoing through the forest. The creature let out a terrible scream and dissolved into the shadows. Tisho Minko knew that the battle was not yet over, and he called out to Lo-Fa, and the guardian of the forest appeared, his eyes blazing with fury. Together, Tisho Minko and Lo-Fa fought the creature, driving it back into the darkness. The settlers, seeing the power of the Chickasaw and their guardian, fled in terror, leaving the land, their tents and cabins behind them. With the settlers gone and the creature defeated, the Chickasaw people began the long process of healing the land. They cleansed the forest, performing rituals to restore the balance and to honor the spirits of the forest. The missing villagers were mourned, and their spirits were laid to rest. The Chickasaw people rebuilt their lives, mourning the people who were lost, and were always mindful of the lessons they had learned. They knew that as long as they protected the land and its spirits, they would be safe. They knew that Lo-Fa would always be watching over them, a silent guardian in the shadows of the forest. The Algonquin tribes, including the Cree and Mi'kmaq, have long believed in the existence of a large, hairy, human-like creature that roams the forest. In their worldview, Sasquatch is not merely a creature of the forest, but a spiritual entity with a profound connection to the land. Elders tell stories of how Sasquatch has been a part of the world since time immemorial, watching over the forest and the people who live there. This relationship is one of mutual respect and understanding, for the Algonquin believe that Sasquatch is a protector of nature and ensures the balance between humans and the environment that they live in. In the heart of a brutal winter, a group of Algonquin hunters found themselves on the brink of starvation. The snow lay thick and unyielding, a white shroud that muffled the forest and concealed its secrets. The hunters, led by the seasoned warrior Makwa, had ventured deep into the wilderness, driven by the desperate need to find food for their village. But as the days passed, their situation grew more dire. The game was scarce, and the cold gnawed at their bones. One night, as they huddled around the maker fire, Makwa spoke of an ancient legend, the tale of Sasquatch, the guardian of the forest. According to the elders, Sasquatch was a towering, hairy creature with the strength of 10 men and the cunning of a wolf. It was said to appear at times of great need, but whether it came as a savior or a harbinger of doom was uncertain. The younger hunters listened with a mix of skepticism and fear. They had heard the stories before, but in their current plight, the legend took on a new, ominous weight. That night, as the wind howled through the trees, they heard something else. A low, guttural growl that sent shivers through their spines. Makwa told them not to fear, and that they should follow the sound. Perhaps it was a sign, a clue to the whereabouts of wild game. They moved cautiously through the forest, the moon casting eerie shadows on the snow. The growl grew louder, more menacing, until they came upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a massive figure. It was Sasquatch, its eyes glowing, amber like 2 embers burning in the night. The creature towered over them, its breath visible in the frigid air, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The hunters were frozen in place, caught between awe and terror. Makwa stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "We seek food for our people," he said. "We mean you no harm." Sasquatch regarded them silently, its eyes piercing through the darkness. Then, with a sudden, swift motion, it turned and disappeared into the forest. The hunters, unsure of what to do, followed the creature's tracks, and they led to a hidden valley teeming with deer and other game. The hunters quickly set to work, their spirits uplifted by the unexpected bounty. They filled their packs with meat and prepared to return to their village. As they made their way back, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched. That night, as they camped on the edge of the forest, they heard the growls again. This time, it was closer than they insisted. The hunters gripped their weapons, their eyes scanning the darkness. Suddenly, Sasquatch emerged again from the shadows, this time its eyes blazing with fear. "You have stolen from me," it growled. its voice a deep rumble that echoed through the trees. And now you must pay. The hunters fought bravely, but they were no match for the creature's strength and speed. One by one they fell, until only Makwa remained. He faced the Sasquatch, his heart pounding in his chest. "We only took what we needed," he said. "We meant no disrespect." Sasquatch paused, its eyes narrowing. Then with a final, bone-chilling howl, it vanished into the night. Makwa, wounded but alive, made his way back to the village. He brought with him the meat that would save his people, but he also carried a warning, a reminder of the power and mystery of the forest. The Algonquin tribes have numerous stories of real-life encounters with Sasquatch that took place during colonial times and helped to shape their dealings with the white settlers that had arrived. One tale involves a group of Micmac fishermen who were camping by a river in Nova Scotia. They were guiding a group of white settlers to where the fishing was good, hoping that their good relationship would help the tribe in future dealings. Late one night, they heard a strange sound, guttural noises coming from the opposite bank. When they shone their lanterns across the water, they all saw a large, hairy figure standing among the trees. The figure watched them for several moments before retreating into the darkness. The fishermen returned and told the tribe that they had witnessed a Sasquatch, a guardian of the river, who was ensuring that they would respect the river while showing the settlers where to hunt and fish. The encounter was taken as both a warning and a blessing over the tribe's acts of showing the settlers how to survive in the wilderness. Even in modern times, the Algonquin tribes continue to report encounters with Sasquatch. These stories often blend traditional beliefs with contemporary experiences, highlighting the enduring presence and mystery of this being. In 2017, a group of Ojibwe teenagers claimed to have seen Sasquatch while hiking in a remote part of their reservation. They described the creature as being over 7 feet tall, covered in dark hair, and moving with an incredible speed. The teenagers were initially frightened, but later felt honored to have witnessed something so rare and significant. Tribal elders explained that Sasquatch sightings are considered an honor and a blessing, and that the teens should hold that experience close to their hearts. Another modern encounter was reported by a Cree family who were camping in a national park. Late one night, they heard loud, rhythmic knocking sounds coming from the forest. When they got up to investigate, they found large footprints leading away from their campsite. The family believed that Sasquatch was trying to communicate with them, using the knocking sounds to signal its presence. This experience reinforced their belief in the spiritual connection between humans and this mysterious creature. In the heart of the Navajo Nation, tales of a mysterious creature known as Sasquatch or Biki-Ni-Tsa have been passed down through generations. Unlike the Navajo's fearsome skinwalker, the Sasquatch is often seen as a protector of people and the wild lands, and a guardian of the Navajo people. Long ago, in a time when the world was still young and the spirits of the land walked freely among the living, there was a Navajo warrior named Tahoma. He was known for his strength and bravery, a protector of his people, and a hunter of great renown. But Tahoma carried a burden, a darkness that gnawed at his soul. He had lost his family to a mysterious creature that roamed the forest at night, a beast known only in whispers as Biki-Ni-Tsa. The elders spoke of Biki-Ni-Tsa with reverence and fear. They said it was a guardian of the forest, a spirit of the wilds that could not be tamed. But Tahoma's heart burned with vengeance. He vowed to find the creature and end its reign of terror. One moonless night, Tahoma set out into the dense forest, armed with his bow, a quiver of arrows, and a knife forged from the bones of his ancestors. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, but Tahoma's senses were sharp. He moved silently, a shadow among shadows. As he ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence fell over the forest. Tahoma felt the presence of something watching him, something ancient and powerful. He followed the tracks of the beast, each step taking him further from the safety of his village and deeper into the unknown. Hours passed, and the darkness seemed to close in around him. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Tahoma's heart pounded in his chest as he knocked an arrow and scanned the shadows. There, standing at the edge of a clearing, was Bikinitsa. The creature was massive, towering over Tahoma with eyes that glowed like fires in the night. Its fur was matted and dark, blending seamlessly with the night. Tahoma could feel the raw power emanating from the beast, but he stood his ground. With a primal roar, Bikinitsa charged. Tahoma loosed his arrow, but the creature swatted it away as if it were a mere insect. The warrior drew his knife and prepared for the fight of his life. The two clashed in a flurry of fur and bone, each blow resonating through the forest. Tahoma fought with all his might, but Bikinitsa was relentless. It seemed to anticipate his every move, countering with brutal efficiency. Just as Tahoma began to falter, he remembered the words of the elders. Bikinitsa is the spirit of the wild. It cannot be defeated by strength alone. In a moment of clarity, Tahoma dropped his knife and stood tall, meeting the creature's gaze. He spoke in the ancient tongue of his people, invoking the spirits of the land and asking for their aid. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and Bikinitsa paused, its eyes narrowed. And then, with a final, earth-shaking roar, the creature turned and vanished into the night, leaving Tahoma standing alone in the clearing. The warrior knew he had not defeated the beast, but he had earned its respect. He had shown that he was not just a hunter, but a protector of the balance between man and nature. Tahoma returned to his village, forever changed by his encounter. He became a legend among his people and a symbol of courage and wisdom. And although Bikinitsa still roamed the forest, the villagers knew they were safe, for Tahoma had forged a bond with the spirit of the wilds. But the Navajo legends of Bikinitsa and Sasquatch aren't just confined to the past. Even today, there are reports and encounters with this elusive creature. In 2023, a Navajo ranger named John Yazzie was patrolling a remote area of the reservation when he noticed something unusual. Large footprints, far too big to be human, led off into the dense forest. He followed the tracks and soon found himself face to face with a massive, hairy figure. The Sasquatch stood still, watching him with intelligent, human-like eyes. Yazzie recalled the old legends. He didn't feel fear, but a sense of awe. He slowly backed away from the creature, leaving it in peace. Yazzie's encounter was later reported to the Navajo Nation's task force charged with investigating the Sasquatch sightings. Another modern encounter occurred in 2024 when a group of campers reported seeing a Sasquatch near their campsite on the Navajo Nation. They described the creature as standing over 8 feet tall, with dark, shaggy fur. The campers watched in stunned silence as the Sasquatch approached their fire, seemingly curious about it. After a few moments, it turned and disappeared back into the night. The campers, though shaken, said that they had felt privileged to have witnessed such a rare and mysterious creature. In the dense, shadowy forest of the Appalachian Mountains, The Cherokee people spoke in hushed tones of Sioux-Kaloo, the Lord of the Forest. Towering over 10 feet tall with eyes that glow like embers at night, Sioux-Kaloo was both guardian and a terror. His immense strength and seemingly mystical abilities made him a formidable protector of the land, but woe to those who dared to disturb the balance of his domain. A group of settlers, driven by the promise of fertile land and new beginnings, ventured deep into the Cherokee territory. They were led by John Harper, a man of ambition and little regard for the warnings of the native people. The settlers set up camp near a river, their laughter and the clatter of their tools echoing through the forest, unaware of ancient eyes that were watching them. As the days passed, the settlers began to notice strange occurrences throughout their camp. Livestock seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving behind only bloody patches of grass. At night, the woods came alive with eerie noises. Low growls and the snapping of branches filled the air, sending chills down their spines. Enormous footprints, far larger than that of any humans, appeared around the camp, deep and menacing. Fear began to grip the settlers. They whispered among themselves, speaking of wild beasts and vengeful spirits. John Harper dismissed their fears, attributing the disturbances to wolves or bears, but deep down, even he felt a creeping dread. On one moonless night, the settlers' worst fears materialized. The air grew thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Suddenly, a deafening roar shattered the stillness. Sioux-Kaloo emerged from the darkness, his massive form illuminated by the flickering campfires. His eyes burned with fury, and his breath came in ragged, thunderous bursts. Panic erupted. The settlers scrambled to defend themselves, but their weapons were useless against the colossal being. Sioux-Kaloo tore through their camp with terrifying ease, his powerful limbs reducing tents to shreds and scattering supplies like leaves in the wind. His roars echoed through the forest, a symphony of rage and power. John Harper, armed with a rifle, took aim at the beast. The shot rang out, but the bullet barely grazed Sioux-Kaloo's thick hide. With a swift, brutal motion, Sioux-Kaloo swatted Harper aside, sending him crashing into a tree. The settlers' screams filled the night as they fled into the forest, leaving behind the ruins of their camp. Sioux-Kaloo stood still amidst the destruction, his chest heaving with exertion. He looked around and let out one final, bone-chilling roar before retreating back into the shadows, leaving the settlers to their terror and despair. Deep within the forest, the Cherokee people had sensed the disturbance. The elders, wise and attuned to the rhythms of the land, felt the anger of Sioux-Kaloo reverberate through the trees. Among them was Awanita, a respected warrior and shaman who understood the delicate balance between the natural and supernatural world. The settlers' intrusion had awakened Sioux-Kaloo's wrath, and it was up to the Cherokee to restore harmony. Awanita gathered a group of skilled warriors and shamans. They moved with purpose, collecting torches, weapons, and sacred items. The Cherokee knew that Sioux-Kaloo was not merely a beast, but a spirit of the forest, and they needed more than brute force to confront him. They prepared chants and rituals drawing on ancient knowledge passed down through generations. As the Cherokee approached the settlers' camp, the scene of devastation unfolded before them. The once bustling camp was now a wasteland of torn tents and scattered belongings. The settlers, huddled together in fear, looked up in desperation as the Cherokee arrived. Awanita stepped forward, his presence commanding respect from all. He raised a torch high, its flames dancing in the night. The Cherokee formed a circle around their camp, their voices rising in a powerful chant. The air began to grow thicker with the scent of burning sage and cedar, sacred herbs meant to cleanse and protect. And from the depths of the forest, Sukalu emerged once more. His eyes blazed with fury again, but there was a flicker of recognition as he faced the Cherokee. Awanita met his gaze, unflinching. The warriors brandished their torches, the flames casting eerie shadows on the trees. The standoff was tense, the air crackling with energy. Awanita began to chant, his voice strong and steady. The other shamans joined in, their voices weaving a tapestry of sound that resonated with the very soul of the forest. The flames of the torches grew brighter, their light pushing back the darkness. Sukalu roared, a sound that shook the ground, but the Cherokee stood firm, their chants unwavering. Slowly, the gray beast began to retreat, step by step, back into the shadows. The flames and the chants drove him deeper into the forest until he was swallowed by the night. The settlers, awestruck and grateful, approached the Cherokee with a newfound respect. John Harper, bruised and humbled, thanked Awanita and his people. The Cherokee warned the settlers of the consequences of disturbing the land and its guardians. They spoke of the need to live in harmony with nature and to respect the spirits that watched over the wild lands. With Sukalu's retreat, peace was restored. The settlers, now more mindful of their actions, began to rebuild their camp with a deeper understanding of the land they inhabited. The Cherokee returned to their village, ever vigilant, knowing that the balance of the forest required constant care and respect. And if you like this kind of content, I ask that you join the Strange Highness Kingdom and give me a like and subscribe right now. It truly does help us grow the channel, bring out more content, and reach more people just like you. And of course, if you have an encounter with the strange, the weird, or a Sasquatch sighting, let us know below.